Hello and welcome to Fueling Around with me, Jason Plato, and my co-pilot and navigator, Dave Vitty.
Hello.
Fueling Around is powered by Adrian Flux. As the UK's largest specialist insurance broker, Adrian Flux will tailor a quote to your exact needs and help save you money on your car, your bike, or your home insurance. So then, how are you, mate?
I'm very good. I'm excellent, in fact. How are you, Mr. Plato?
Excellent and improving. and often when you say that to people as well, and they say, how are you? They go, what's wrong? Have you been poorly?
But no, you're looking good, and I'm looking forward to today because you might not be the only rapid person in this virtual room. That's all I'm going to say.
I think you might be right, actually. And, I guess today is one of these people which, you got at school were just a bit bloody annoying. They're handsome. A great hit with the chicks. He can act, he can dance, and also he can drive cars pretty quick. It's Twinkle Toes, of course, the one and only Kelvin Fletcher. Hello, mate, how are you?
I'm really good. Thank you for that introduction, Jason.
Mate, it's fully deserved. Fully deserved.
When you say those little descriptions there, the one that I sit back and be most proud is when you say I'm pretty quick, because to hear that from somebody as yourself, sounds weird, but I think I might have told you this before, but literally grew up with pictures of you on my bedroom wall. As a capacity as a racing driver, you were everything you were relatable, you were, for me, a closer idol, I guess, than any F1 star. I was a big fan of Nigel Mansell, don't get me wrong, but
me too.
There was just something about you and what the British touring cars represented. For a young working class lad, it was something that I could go and visit with my dad, watch, and I did. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for that lovely introduction. However much bullshit there is there, but either way, I liked it. Thank you.
Here's a question for you, Kelvin. In terms of what you just said, as a young lad growing up, and this maybe is the same sort of thing with me, did you find you were more drawn to touring cars because they look more like proper cars? I know that's a really simplistic thing, but for me, they've always been more exciting than Formula One because they still look like the cars that they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that was the great marketing ability of the British touring cars. It seemed to be, I grew up, I'm still to this day, a huge Vauxhall and Ford man. That's all my dad ever used to have, albeit the GSI versions or the Cosworths or whatever it were. But what was great about the touring cars is that they, basically, you weren't watching the likes of John Cleland and whatnot in the Vauxhall Cavaliers over the weekend, racing around the circuit, exciting racing, fast cars. And in theory, on a Monday morning, you could go and buy that same car. And that is in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s corporate world, I guess that's what great marketing ability was, and that's why the series was so successful. You could never go and buy an F1 car, but touring cars was achievable. The Vauxhall Cavalier that you saw racing around the track, you could go and buy on a Monday morning. And most people have it as a company car, so it was absolutely relatable and attainable, and I thought that was the beauty of it.
Yeah, and people get passionate about the brand of car that they've invested in, and you'd have the Ford people over there, and there'd be a bit of banter between the Vauxhall people and the BMW folk, and exactly right, that's why it captures the imagination.
I thought that was a great thing about touring cars, is that everybody felt that they were represented. The Volvo lovers were represented with the 850. The Renault guys were represented with the Laguna. Every there is that felt, an ownership of the series. And again, that's relatable, and that's what I thought was what made it a great success. For me, growing up, I remember my dad. One of my first memories of one of his cars. He was a diesel fitter at the time, which is a glorified mechanic on commercial vehicles, and he worked his arse off. Amazing work ethic, and worked all day, and then at home at night or at weekends he'd be under someone's car doing a foreigner. And we lived in a little 2 up 2 down in Durka in Oldham, and got great memories, great childhood. And we didn't have much, but we had a lot of love and support, and cars were mine and my dad's thing, and mechanics and everything like that. I wanted to be a mechanic. I aspired to copy my dad. And the first car I remember him having was a red Vauxhall Cavalier SRI 130.
Oh, nice.
And that was probably about 4 or 5 years old. At the time, I think he was a mechanic or some sort of foreman or some sort of level where he got a company car. It weren't a brand new company car, but it was probably the manager's when it was first came out, and then he kind of handed down. So I remember that E-Edge. I I don't know what year it was, but a Cavalier.
87 E-Reg, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Good Lord, what? Look at that's some skill, isn't it?
That is some skill.
It's either 87 or 88. It's around then was E-Reg.
But that was the first, so that was a Vauxhall. And then that's kind of where the love affair for Vauxhalls started. And City went on to have, he had the Vauxhall Cavalier Mark III, I think GSI 2000, H-Reg, what's that,
1990.
1990.
But it's the confidence in which he's pumping out, doesn't it? I think
The delivery.
1990.
and then what else did we have? He went a bit AWOL for a while. He had a Volkswagen Golf GTI. So you can obviously all these cars were kind of the hot hatches, or the pinnacle of their own model, if you like.
Was he a bit of a boy racer, Kelv?
A little bit, yeah. I always remember once I was 13 years old. My youngest brother had just been born, and it was born on New Year's Day, and it was really bad snow. And he picked me and my younger brother up, Dean. I was 13, Dean was 11, to go and see our brand new baby. And I'm trying to think what car he had at the time, but all I remember is him pulling handbrake turns, in the car park at the hospital. And it was stuff like that. He never really, he on the motorway, he won't drive anything like that, but maybe away from the lights, up to 40 mile an hour.
Yeah.
But it was that, first.
He'd have a go.
And he'd have a go, and that, or race someone from the lights. And that for me as a kid was just, sometimes he'd let me do the gears. So I'd start out watching him. Every time he pressed the clutch, I'd go up the box or down the box. And then I'd find it in a way where I wouldn't even need to watch the footwell. I could just kind of, obviously hear when he's coming off the gas and change for him. And as weird as it sounds, but that was our bonding. That was mine and my dad's little thing. We didn't go camping. He wasn't a cuddly type, but that was our little father and son. It's those moments that I look back on, and I just, it's weird, isn't it? Everyone's probably got their own little things like that, but for me, changing gears in my dad's Cavalier, SRI 130 or GSI, whatever it might have been, or the Volkswagen Golf actually got stolen, which we were gutted about. And he also had an Escort RS Turbo Mark II.
Wow.
And that got stolen as well. And I think on both occasions, I'm sure my mum didn't lock it. My mum used to use the cars every now and again, and like some mums do, forget to lock it. Oh, I forgot to lock it. It's no big deal. Next minute, it's bloody been stolen. But that was at a time when it was rife. Those sort of cars were being stolen all the time.
They were obviously fast for their day, but in terms of the security on them, they weren't difficult to get into or indeed to get started. And as you say, that was the era, I think, the early era of sort of hot hatches and hot saloons where they were just going missing because anybody with a coat hanger or something like that could just get in and off they go. It's funny you should say about changing the gears, because my thing, when I was about, it's sort of similar age, so I must have been about, I don't know, kind of 10, 11, 12, 13, that kind of age. And my dad used to let me go and start the car. And I thought that was really grown up. So if we were going out, he would give me the keys and I'd go out thinking I was really grown up and open the door out onto the drive, and I'd open the car up and I'd put the ignition in, obviously check that it was in neutral. That was the important bit. I'd been taught that. And then I'd turn the key, and actually just hearing the car start up was so exciting. That was all I was doing. But that was my job. And then, of course, I'd sort of, warm the car up for Dad, and then I'd get out, and then I'd get in the other side and he'd jump in. But to me, that was so exciting, the fact that I could actually start this car up. It's amazing. Let's talk Kelvin and cars some more then. First car, Kelvin, what was it?
My dad bought me a classic Mini when I was 13 years old. And it was then I wanted to start working on cars, because I was in Emmerdale, but I was still fixated. And I think being reminded and reinforced by my careers advisor that as an actor, it's no career, it's not sustainable, you need to think about getting a job. Academically, I was all right, but hands-on fixing things was my thing. So we went to a scrapyard and we bought a Mini for 100 quid. And I don't think it was runnable, but I took it home, we had it in the little garage, and I used to just, carburetor off, put it back on, just little bits and things that my dad would teach me, and get a real basic foundation of mechanics and the understanding of that. That was my pride and joy. Taught myself to drive in that car. And used to just go up and down the drive. But when I was 17, my first car was a Volkswagen Polo GTI.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's a proper first car, isn't it?
Yeah, I went all out, because that was my only vice, I guess. Obviously, I wasn't drinking at that time, but legally. Cars were my thing, and I'd been working professionally as an actor since I was 8 years old. So I'd saved my money in that, but I was financially independent. I was as a 17-year-old, I was probably earning more than my dad at the time, and I said, Dad, I really want this car. and I'd been researching it, and I'd even emailed the local dealership, found out, obviously, there was a franchise who owned that franchise. And I was, as I am now, pretty industrious, pretty savvy, and was like, listen, if I can do any PR, anything, can I see a reflection in a discount? So I remember getting it, it was like a 12% discount. It was a big discount, but it was something, it was still, don't get me wrong, I think I paid just over 11 grand for it, and it was probably like a 15 grand car, maybe more.
Yeah.
I had leather seat aspect to it. It might have been a little bit more than that, actually, but it was a 1.6 naturally aspirated. I think it was 140 brake horse, something like that. So it was the first car. It was mega.
What comes after the Polo? Because you've set the bar pretty high with that.
The bar had been set quite high, but after that, at the time, I was a big love of rallying, and rallying I thought was kind of at its peak. It was some amazing cars. Colin McRae was kind of the man to be. Yeah. I always felt that I'm the underdog, so I always looked out for the other underdog. And Tommy Mäkinen there was just something about him that I liked. I like the Scandinavians anyway. They have a cool sense of humour. They hold themselves very well. And obviously his car was a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. And a very good friend of my dad's. My dad's into the commercial haulage sector. And a good friend of his based over in Belfast in Northern Ireland was just about to sell his beloved Tommy Mäkinen edition Mitsubishi Evolution 6, and it was absolutely pristine, like all his cars were. It was absolutely immaculate. He'd sent it off to top Mitsubishi place. They have a bit of love breathed on it, so it'd been tweaked here and there, but not like a boy racer car. It was absolutely just impeccable. And this guy had 22Bs. He had all the cars, and this was his kind of his love affair, and he didn't really want to sell it. And but yeah, he agreed to sell it to me on various conditions that I look after it. It was absolutely a list of conditions that came with a sale. And yes, I think I just turned 18, which is ridiculous. And my second car was a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution Tommy Mäkinen with 380 brake horse.
Mate, that's proper, isn't it?
That's proper,
that's a
isn't
proper
it?
thing. And do you know what? Having driven all those cars of that era, that was the car to have. That was much better to drive than the Scooby. Yeah, that was the rally car.
I've not driven many of those type of cars. I've driven the odd Subaru, but there was just something about the Tom Mäkinen which looked slick. And the fact that it was a Tom Mäkinen edition, it was just something a little bit like, if you know. Yeah. And it was just beautiful to drive, and weirdly quite easy to drive. You could tootle about in it and not having to be terrace, and it just was quite a nice drive. A nice small steering wheel, the gear. The gearbox was just lovely. It kind of, the way it went into the gear just felt so nice. And then I had a dump valve on there. So it was just, and you could hold it. You could just hold it to a point where you could, really. It was just. I remember going through. At the time, obviously, I was living in Leeds and filming Emmerdale. So on my lunch break, I'd go out into Leeds, into the centre of Leeds, sun would be shining, and probably most girls would look at that car thinking, boy racer, what on earth is that? It looks atrocious. But like I said, for people that knew, that was for me a real kudos car. Yeah. And many a times I'd come up against M3s or even M5s or even the odd Ferrari Aston Martin, and this would absolutely wipe the floor. 4-wheel drive, it was bulletproof. It was just an amazing, probably to this day, my favourite car. And I'm in discussion with him in a minute. I sold that about 2 years later for peanuts. And the guy bought it off me, still owns it to this day. And I messaged him just last week saying, do you want to sell it back to me?
Okay, so what followed that then? I'm intrigued. This is going far higher at a far earlier age than I ever imagined.
I'm writing these down, actually, because this is a hell of a list, isn't it?
Oh, I'm trying to think what quickly followed that. I think I had a brief spell with an M3 after that, if I remember rightly. Yeah, a cabriolet. I had the 18-inch rims. You could have the 19-inch rims, but I kept the standard rims because there was a deep dish as well on the rear wheel. So for me, I just felt it looked a little bit better. And I think it was the SMG gearbox. So I had the.
Do you know what? That was a good little gearbox on that car.
It was a great car. Yeah. Again, it just felt. There's something about small gearboxes. I remember the Mazda MX-5 used to do it. When you get a small gearbox in your hand, it just feels. It makes you feel more manly, but it just feels really nice.
I'm writing that down as well.
You see, for my money, you can never ever go wrong with an M3. They've never made a bad one, have they? You know?
No.
And I think that should be part of everybody's car history somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone should at least live with one for a little bit. Maybe not buy it, but at least hire one or just live with one. Scare yourself on the roundabout in the wet, which we've all done and looked very, very average up on the grass verge. But yeah, great on lush cars.
I just about 3 or 4 years ago, I had is it the F10? I had that in the Asmarina Blue M3. That's been my second ever M3, but that again is probably been one of my favourite cars. It wasn't. I'd had the C63 as well, so it wasn't quite as quick as the C63, but it handled, but it just felt and it sounded better for me. Yeah. So after that was short. I think I had the M3 for about 4 or 5 months, and then I went boring, and I got the first Range Rover Sport. I got the diesel. I think there was only a 2.5 diesel or the supercharged version. I didn't fancy the supercharged because at the time I was probably commuting, 50 miles a day. And I went for but I spec'd it up. I had everything on it, and that was 2006. And the registration, which I've still got to this day, I was looking on DVLA and I didn't want to get an expensive reg, but I wanted to just get something a bit quirky. And I managed to find for 250 quid XX06XXX.
Wow,
that's a good one.
Yeah, and it means nothing, but it was just a little bit. So I had that on my Range Rover. It was a black Range Rover, and I had a black plate as well. So I used to get stopped all the time, but I was a rebel. So that was, and I probably had that car for a couple of years.
Anything Italian in the Fletcher fleet?
Yes, I had. Not so long after that, I got my first ever Ferrari.
And tell me, you were pre-30.
I made a thing to myself. I wanted to be 425, and I was just turned 25.
Good lad.
A Ferrari F430 Spider.
Doesn't get any better.
It was in the Grigio silver, like a deep grey. It had the Challenge wheels, red interior with a bucket seat. So it had quite a few features of the Challenge, which were the special version of it. And I think I didn't give massive amounts of money for it, but I remember I kept that for 2 years. I bought it with about 4,000 miles on it, and I put about 25,000 miles on it. People have these cars and sit them. For me, I was in this car. I used to drive it all, and if I wasn't driving it, my girlfriend, who's now my wife at the time, I gave her the keys and I just said, use it. It's for driving, and it was, and that was probably is the most drivable car. It was just. You could go to the shops in it, Can you imagine this? I think I'd moved back to Oldham at that point. So I was living in Oldham, driving around in a Ferrari F430. It's...
It was bonkers, eh?
Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, it's mad. And probably, weirdly, one of my proudest moments, because me and my dad have always dreamed about owning a car like that. And financially it probably wasn't the soundest of moves, but I wanted it, and I still look back as one of my proudest achievements, really. Which sounds daft, but for me it was.
What was the insurance like as a 25-year-old living in Oldham with a Ferrari?
I would have thought cataract introducing.
Not that bad, It was I think $4.5 grand.
Okay.
No way.
And I did it for a year, and then I was at the Autosport show in January the following year, and it was just coming up for renewal. And I got to chatting to an insurance broker, Italian, Cockney, as a place. Still deal with him now in Essex. A real wide boy. Looked immaculate, had his Rolex on, hair slicked back. Oh, I'm all right, thanks. I've already got insurance. I bet we could beat it. And I said, really? I said, I don't know. I said, I'm an actor, and it's quite tough to. I bet we could beat it. What have you got? I said, I've got a Ferrari F430. Oh, and what are you paying at the minute? And I says, $2.5 grand. And I was paying 4.5. But I just thought, it's giving it the big one. I'll see if you can. 2.5. He went, 2.5. Leave it with me. Give me a call the next day. He got it for 2.2, so I went with him. And I've been a customer ever since. So it's funny how, sometimes it's funny what a little bit of blagging can do.
So look, I tell you what, cars, obviously. Mate, tell me about Strictly. Tell me about that, because I guess we're all the same. I sit down with Soph, my wife, and my 2 girls, and we watch it. That time of the year comes, and we just can't stop watching it because it's such a great, easy watch. But what's it like? What's the whole process like?
For me, it was unorthodox in the fashion in which I went in the beginning. I'd auditioned for Strictly the year before, or I think 2 years before, and for whatever reason, didn't kind of make it. They didn't feel that I was the right fit, or whatever it were. And a couple of years later, they just randomly got a call off my agent saying, Kelvin, are you sat down? because he knew how much I wanted to do it. I'd love this show, and I used to watch it, and I thought, well, I've never danced, but I feel like I've got rhythm. Every time we go to a birthday or a wedding or something, I'm always I'm always up dancing, and I was brought up on Northern Soul music, Motown. I felt like I had a bit of groove in me, and I just thought I'd give it a go. I'd have a dig, and like anything, I'd give absolutely my best, and what I knew is that I'm pretty sure the audience have only ever seen me for 20 years playing a farmer. That when they see me as me, I'm going to be not what they expected. And I thought, and I was excited at the fact of being able to show people that I'm not what you think, And so yeah, my agent knew all this, and he just said, listen, are you sat down? Strictly have been in touch, and they want you for this show. Now, it had already been announced, the lineup, they were already in rehearsals. They were, I think, 2 or 3 weeks in. They'd done the live show, they were about to do the first show. So it transpired that one of the contestants had an injury, and
Jamie Lang, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Jamie Lang, yeah. And it was looking like he wasn't going to be able to be fully fit, and it would somewhat be a liability. His ankle might give way, or his knee. I can't remember what it was. Do I want to do it? But I had to make a decision within a couple of hours, because they were literally ready to pull the plug with him and give me a shot. So I wasn't on a replacement list or anything like that. I didn't even make the replacement list. They do have a replacement, a standby, but I was the absolute underdog, the underdog that couldn't make the subs bench. But it was, for me, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. I was like, I've wanted to do this job for so long. I've auditioned for it. They've said no. Coming in, it's not the ideal scenario, but sometimes opportunities present themselves, and and that's it. So I went back. I said, I'm in. What do I need to do? So I had to sign quickly an NDA. Went and had my medical the next morning. It was just surreal. I had a crash course meeting with all the execs, saying that we're going to keep it under wraps for a week if we can. You're going to go meet your partner. You're going to meet all the team, not the celebrities, not the professional dancers, but just kind of your runner and everything like that. So I did that, and it was just a whirlwind. I was kind of just taking everything in. Went away to Rome that weekend with my wife, and then the news broke while I was away that weekend, and it was just a bizarre. Then I came back, trained for 2 weeks, just ridiculously hard, 12-hour days, so intense.
Really? So that's not just PR, the stuff when we hear all the celebs going, it's hard work, we're in our Cuban heel shoes all day long. It is like that, yeah?
Jason, I've run marathons, I've done triathlons, that is the hardest I've ever worked.
I can believe it as well, because I'm still astounded by what you said a few minutes ago, where you've never danced before. Because I just assumed, and forgive me, and I hope this isn't insulting, but for somebody who's obviously been on the screens for a lot of years, I wondered whether you were one of those kind of kids who done a bit of acting, done a bit of singing, done a bit of dancing, a bit of an all-rounder in the entertainment world. But the fact that you haven't, because I can still remember, and Jason, you'll be the same, you will have been sat there with Soph, and I was sat here on the sofa with Nick, my missus, and you came out with Oti. And I kind of thought, oh, look, there's Kelvin, because obviously we've met a few years ago and stuff like that. And I thought, I'm really chuffed that you're on this. And then suddenly the moves that you were breaking out, and I don't know, was it a samba or something that you started with? It was something Latin anyway. And you're in this sort of bluey outfit. And I think the whole country did the same thing. Everybody just open mouth just went, oh my God, he can move. Where did that come from? And suddenly you'd gone from being this guy that had just come in at the last minute to being a favourite within seconds.
It was mad, and it was as crazy for me as it was for you watching it, in a different way. But I didn't kind of know I had that, but I just knew, I felt like I had a bit of natural rhythm. And like acting, it's all about confidence. If you can go out there and lose your inhibitions, and it does feel silly wearing those outfits, being on Cuban heels, having, doing all these moves, but for me, as a young actor, I was used to playing, being a bit camp or doing, and I was like, well, I'm happy with that. It's not, it's fine. And so I don't think I was anything extra special. I think I was just prepared and confident to lose my inhibitions. And so it was a crazy time, and, an amazing experience. And never in a million years did I think that I'd do what I did and go on to win.
Well, you should be very proud, mate.
Absolutely proud.
We haven't talked about racing at all, Kelvin. And obviously this is a huge part of your life. I read something that it said that your first venture into racing was the 2012 Silverstone Classic. Is that true, or were you not racing minis before that?
Yeah, I started racing minis that year. So I think the Silverstone Classic was July, and I did my first race in April. So I just got my racing licence that year.
Because I was in that race as well.
Of course, yeah.
Were you, Dave?
I was in that same race, yeah. And I read this the other day, and I kind of thought, God, I was in that. Because there was JK was in there, you won. Yeah. JK was in there, Brian Johnson was in there.
Yeah,
there was all sorts of people, and we were racing Morgans.
The Morgans, what a great experience.
It was bizarre. But I didn't realise that you'd only really started very, very close to then.
Yeah, I got my. I've been to the Autosport show like we did every year. Never done any go-kart or anything like that apart from the odd stag do. But was a huge spectator, a huge motorsport fan. So I was watching Jason regularly, watching British touring cars, British Superbike, World Superbike, MotoGP. I was watching everything, and as a spectator. And as I was on TV, I was lucky enough to mix in certain circles and be able to get hospitality at certain events. So. But I'd never considered racing because I just didn't have the time, or just thought, I'd kind of missed the boat. I was 28 years old. And then at the Autosport show, they had a classic mini on the BRSCC stand and for the Mighty Minis. And me and my dad stopped and reminisced and said, do you remember when you bought me a mini when I was 13 and we used to fix it? And the guy came over and we said, what's this championship? He said, oh, it's a standard car, just with a roll cage and different shock absorbers. Other than that, it's club racing, entry level. And it's probably about 300 quid a weekend. And we would look at each other and said, well, shall we give it a go? What do I need to do? And within a week, I called him and says, listen, I've never done it. What do I need to do? He says, get yourself an ARDS licence. So I went and did that. I rang him up. I said, is anybody selling a car? I don't fancy building one. He said, one guy's just about to step up in class. He's got a car for sale in Harrogate. I went and bought the car. Managed to blag some free overalls, a free helmet. Booked a track day, Oulton Park. I'd never done a track day before. It was hailstoning. Turned up with this mini on the back of a trailer. Me and my dad were just buzzing around like hooligans, and these Cosworths and Subarus and Mitsubishis flying past us, and we were just loving it. And then 2 weeks later, I rocked up at Oulton Park for my first ever race with a big X on the back, with no aspirations. Everyone's got the motorhomes, and I'm thinking, bloody hell, this is a bit serious, And I'm like, I thought this championship was just you arrive and drive. We're all tweaking their engines, and I said to one guy next to me, what should your tyre pressures be at? And he said 25 psi. I'd asked someone else, he said 35. So I'm like, I'll just do 130. I didn't know what I was doing. I've got 30 clicks on the shocks. I'll just go 15 clicks all around and just go. And I've gone fingered, and you get 15 minutes qualifying. I'd had a couple of mates come and watch me. We'd camped out the night before. I've never camped out with my dad, and that me and him was in a tent on the concrete the night before in a 2-man tent. So in itself, racing, and it still is to this day, that's what racing's about. It's the weekend, it's the family, because I've not come through the ranks of go-kart or anything. I've just been a fan. I've been on the fence looking in, and now I was inside. So I was just felt, and, don't get me wrong, I was financially independent, but spending $4 or $5 grand a year was my limit. I had a nice Ferrari F430 sat next to my Mini with my 2-man tent, but that was the balance that I thought I wasn't prepared to go and spend 30 grand a year racing, in a different class, because I couldn't afford it. And that for me, mini racing at that level was a great balance. And that was it. Yeah, I think I had 3 races, and then I was asked to do the Celebrity Classic. Terry Grant. The stunt driver,
The fruitcake, that is Terry Grant.
The absolute legend, who I had some amazing nights with, just said, Kelvin, if you've been asked, would you fancy doing that? I said, yeah, I'd love to do it, but I've never been asked. He said, oh, well, I can put a call in for you. And I was asked to do it. And again, I went in there completely under the radar, really, because there was some very high-profile people. Nobody really knew who I was, and
they all saw you going past them at speed because you had this kind of because there was Heston Blumenthal was there and Sir Patrick Stewart was there, and then suddenly, as I say, you just went. I was like, who's that? Bloody, it's Kelvin Fletcher from Emmerdale. He's rapid.
I had a touch, you see, on the Friday. I think you all had a test on the Friday. I couldn't make it because I was filming. When I arrived on Saturday, the cars had already been allocated, and it was a case of where they let the celebrities in, and you meet the owners and you pick your cars. Now there's V8s, V6s, and 4 cylinders. Yeah. So all the V8s, naturally, a V8, yeah, I'll have that one. That's more 300, I'll have that one. And I was left, there was a couple of cars that had not been allocated, And it was this lady's car. She was apparently always finishing at the back, 4-cylinder, and all the V8s had been taken, all the other cars had been taken. And because I couldn't make the test day on the Friday, I had to have this. So I got chatting to her, and she said, "It's not as powerful as the others, darling, but it's really nimble. It's low, honestly, you'll really enjoy it." And I thought that was the best thing, because on the straights, everybody seemed to go off into the distance, but the corners, I didn't need to brake. I just powered straight through, and that was it. So again, maybe somebody played a helping hand there.
This year, Kelv's the big step up into GT3 and the British GTs. Obviously, season because of what's happened, none of us have been doing any racing. I mean, what's going to happen with that? Are you going to get a chance to get out there?
Yeah, we hope so. It was, it's been a great 12. It's been a great, few years since with the British GT. We won the Pro-Am last year in the GT4. And we wanted to step up into GT3, so we was really excited with a new team, in the Bentley, and then this happened. So we're still hopeful and keen to get out. It's just how that's going to look. We've got to consider our sponsors, friends, family. There's such effort, as you'll know, Jason, to get on there in the first place on the grid. And I try and leverage and maximise my uniqueness in so many ways. But now I'm trying to balance, because as an AM driver, I know that I'm quick. And I'm GT4 last year. I was consistently, probably the top 40% of the professional drivers. So I just took great confidence in that, and I'm still very early on in my driving career. And I just always, I'll never forget, Jason. But you were one of the couple of people when I did British touring cars that, again, that was 3 years after I passed my ARDS test. I'd not raced the year before because I couldn't find budget. Not many people have gone into British touring cars having not raced for a year, having only had 3 years ARDS licence.
I'd walked away from it.
I'd not. The first time I drove the car was FP1 Brands Hatch. That I'd not tested it. I'd not. That was the first time I drove the car, and it was amazing just to kind of be on the grid with somebody like yourself. But I'll never forget. A lot of young lads there probably saw me as a threat. Not for my pace, because I was always going to be a second or so off. It was more about I was bringing a profile, and if I could be quick, I would somewhat undermine what they're doing. If this TV guy can come and compete, then what does that say about us? Which I think is short-minded, but they're foolish for thinking that. But you were one of the few, and you were at the top of your game. And the sign for me of a true champion is that you were the first person to come over and embrace me and welcome me and say, "You're gonna have a giggle, give it your all." And I wasn't on your radar, and rightly so. You're an out and out professional top driver, but you welcomed me, and that for me, I remember thinking, of all the guys, that says it all. Jason Plato is the top dog, and he's given me all the time there, and welcomed me with open arms. And some of the guys who I ended up being quicker than were the ones who were kind of, I felt. They were doing their best to alienate me. So it was still a great experience, but it was, for me, GT racing at the minute is where it's at. I can leverage that. I can make it commercially work for myself. And I love the element of team, with a team. I've got a teammate now who I've had for a bit of continuity there. I've had him for 2 years now. So we wanted to be the first team to ever win consecutive titles, GT4 and GT3. And fingers crossed we can go and do that. But like I said, we've got to consider if it's behind closed doors, and that's going to be a massive impact, detrimental impact on our sponsors and our ability to activate those sponsorships and that partnership. So, we'll watch your space, I guess.
Well, I suppose we just have to wait and see, don't we? At the moment, nobody knows what's going to happen. It's uncertain times for everybody. Everybody's just keeping everything crossed that actually normal service can resume, or as close to normal service as possible can resume. And look forward to seeing you back out on track soon, Kelvin. JP, sadly, and I could do this for hours because it's brilliant, but we're going to have to wrap it up, I'm afraid.
We are going to have to wrap it up. So again, folks, that's it for this episode of Fueling Around. Thanks, Dave, as always, and a big thanks to our special guest and our mate, Kelvin Fletcher. Thanks a lot, mate. You've been ace to chat to.
Thank you, guys. Good luck with the rest of the episodes, and I'll be sat patiently waiting for them to be released.
That's about it for this episode of Fueling Around, powered by Adrian Flux. As the UK's largest specialist insurance broker, Adrian Flux will tailor a quote to your exact needs and help save you money on your car, your bike, or your home insurance. Don't forget you can get in touch with us on Twitter at Jason Plato or at David Vitty. And if you've liked what you've heard, feel free to give us a 15 or 20 or 30 star rating if there is such a thing. press the subscribe button and share the podcast on all your socials. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.